Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It is time we started with the top cut of the PDL. Yes, we were on a 2 week break, just getting ready for the top cut, and here we are playing Sublime Maniac and the San Antonio Espurrs again. We did play them in the original rounds of the tournament, and we are back again playing him for top cut. If you do remember, the battle was very, very close and very, very difficult. So, uh, I can be sure that he'll bring some new techs that I might not be prepared for, but I've also got some own techs of my own hidden in this team. Now, if you do see the team, it is actually the same 6 Pokemon that we brought for the first battle we had, but we've got some new moves and some new spreads on some of the Pokemon, so let's just hop right into it. First up is going to be Gyarados, pretty much the MVP of the last battle. He managed to uh, late game sweep after he got set up, which was really incredible. But now we're running a bit of a different set. Instead of running Crunch, Earthquake, and Ice Fang, running Waterfall, Ice Fang, and Fire Blast alongside Dragon Dance. So Waterfall just being a really heavy hitting stab move. It even has the ability to hit water absorb man time because Mega Gyarados does have Mold Breaker. So it's just a good coverage against pretty much his entire team. He doesn't have a plethora of good water resists. And Ice Fang is there pretty much specifically for the Zygarde. So we don't turn into setup fodder for that thing. And then of course Fire Blast is going to be the new tech that we have, and this is specifically for Ferroseed. So Ferroseed basically gave Gyarados the biggest trouble last time, running Leech Seed and Protect and having the Iron Barbs just slowly whittling down Gyarados, putting us almost within range of getting knocked out. So with Fire Blast, as you can see from this calc and the special attack investment we have, even the bulkiest of Ferroseed gets 2-hit KO'd by our Fire Blast. So Ferroseed will no longer be a huge threat to us, which makes Gyarados sweeping a lot more, which makes Gyarados capable of sweeping a lot quicker than he had because he doesn't have to worry about the Ferroseed as much. So, of course, Dragon Dance to bolster his already high attack stat, meaning that Waterfall and Ice Fang just threaten almost his entire team. Very little wants to take a +1 Waterfall, and those that do, um, we've got Ice Fang and Fire Blast for. So into the spread, it is pretty crazy, but we're rocking 20 HP, 252 attack, 4 defense, 68 special attack, and 164 speed with a naive nature. So max attack is pretty self-explanatory. Just to maximize his damage output, make sure he can do as much damage to the opposing team as possible. And then the speed stat allows him to outspeed Tapu Koko at +1. So that would in turn outspeed his entire team, bar Scarfers or let's say Unburden, Driftbloom, or Halucha, or Alolan Raichu. Thanks to their abilities, they can outspeed, but investing more into speed isn't going to help me outspeed those things. Those things are ridiculously fast. So this gives us just enough to outspeed every single unboosted member of his team at +1. And then, of course, the 68 special attack allows us to do a KO Ferroseed 100% of the time with Fire Blast. The rest is put into bulk to give him an easier time setting up against stuff like Wild Charge Rapidash if he does decide to bring that again, or even if he decides to run a grass move on his Ferroseed, like Bullet Seed, we'll be able to take that a little better as well. Next up is going to be Clefable. While we're running the same EV spread as last week, we've got a new move on it, Toxic. I replaced Calm Mind because Calm Mind unfortunately didn't really give us enough momentum because he didn't bring a lot of heavy hitting special attackers. So Clefable wasn't really able to set up in front of those things. So I replaced it with Toxic. So Toxic, we can use that to poison stuff like Rapidash and Alolan Raichu and even Tapu Koko. Basically, he doesn't have a Pokemon that want to get Toxic. So being able to spread the love with this purple magic, that's what we're going to be calling it this week. Toxic is going to be able to slowly whittle down his team, and he doesn't have a lot of Pokemon that are able to absorb Toxic, I guess. He doesn't have stuff like Regenerator Pokemon that can switch out and get recovery and reset the Toxic timer and stuff like that. So we can slowly whittle down his team with Toxic, and then of course Wish Protect for that recovery. We are running Unaware because that Zygarde could be a pain if we don't, and if we just hop into the calcs. As you can see, even a max attack Zygarde's 1,000 arrows is a guaranteed 4-hit KO after leftovers recovery. And if he decides to run the Steelium Z Iron Tail this week, it still will never be able to knock me out in one hit. Also, some other setup sweepers we might be able to stop if he decides to bring Howlucha this week. And Acrobatics, that is 110 base power, is never going to 2-hit KO me. In fact, it doesn't even always 3-hit KO me. So we'll be able to check that thing as well. And of course, we are running the min speed again this week. So that way, Ferroseed, as you can see, a Gyro Ball, very small chance to 3-hit KO. So we can pivot around with our Clefable on that thing if we need to, as it doesn't threaten enough immediate damage. So yep, pretty standard Clefable. Moonblast, of course, is the primary stab, and just hits his team for a decent chunk, thanks to him having not too many fairy resists. Next up is going to be Zapdos. Zapdos is going to be a little bit different as well. Instead of Thunderbolt, we are actually going to be running Volt Switch because he doesn't have very many Pokemon that, well, basically, he doesn't want to switch in stuff like Zygarde to Zapdos. I mean, he could, but the threat of HP Ice, which we're actually running Toxic, but I'll get into that in a second. Basically, Zapdos, just with its coverage from Electric, Fire, and the possibility of having Hidden Power Ice, threatens his entire team with decent damage. So the Pokemon he'd want to switch into this would be stuff like Tapu Koko, which resist its stab and aren't too threatened by its coverage moves, right? And Volt Switch allows us to pivot on that stuff. So if he decides to switch into his Tapu Koko, we can Volt Switch on that and gain momentum. We can switch right into the likes of Nidoking or Tangela. And then, of course, Heat Wave is there for the Ferroseed, another way to make sure that thing doesn't get too out of control. And, of course, we've got more Purple Magic on this thing as well. We've got the Toxic because, as you remember, if you remember from when we first played him, he was able to knock out my Zapdos with a Flash Fire boosted Inferno Overdrive from Zapdos. So since Zapdos is going to be our main check to that Rapidash if he does decide to go physical again, we can actually switch this in and poison it, put it on a timer, and then slowly whittle it down and have that reliable recovery with Roost to make sure that we can stay healthy while he gradually gets worn down. And of course, just the max HP, max defense, since he doesn't actually resist fire. Being able to just have that natural bulk is going to be important in this game. That is what is going to allow it to pivot around. Next up is going to be Nidoking, again running a different set. We're actually going to be running Focus Sash this week with Earth Power, Ice Beam, Flamethrower, and Toxic Spikes. So he's got his own version of the Purple Magic. This is going to basically be our lead Pokemon. Set up Toxic Spikes. He doesn't have a lot of Pokemon that want to get poisoned. And he doesn't have a lot of defoggers either. So before I go any further, I should probably mention that move tutors from Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon are not legal for the remainder of this tournament. We are continuing with Sun and Moon legal Pokemon. So therefore, he can't run stuff like defog Tapu Koko. So I don't have to worry about that. And therefore, being able to set up Toxic Spikes, as long as he doesn't bring the Mantine or something like that, we can basically guarantee to keep the Toxic Spikes up, and basically once things get poisoned, they're not going to be able to get unpoisoned. So they'll be slowly whittled down until they inevitably faint. Earth Power is, of course, his primary source of stab, hitting stuff like Rapidash, Tapu Koko, Raichu, and just even Ferroseed, Zygarde, and Greninja for just solid neutral damage. He doesn't have a lot of good switch-ins to Earth Power, and the things that do switch into Earth Power are threatened by his coverage moves. So stuff like Mantine. Well, Mantine won't take too much from Ice Beam, but Hawlucha and Drifblim will take a good chunk from Ice Beam, and then Flamethrower there pretty much specifically for that. Ferroseed, we are able to just knock it out in one hit thanks to the Sheer Force boost. Unless he is running a significantly bulky spread, and even then it's still a roll. So into the spread, nothing too crazy, just enough speed to outspeed Adamant Zygarde if that's what he plans to go. We can't outspeed Jolly Zygarde, so there's no point in going any faster. Max special attack for as much damage output as possible, and the rest put into bulk. This will help us check stuff like Tapu Koko if he decides to run a more offensive set this week. So next up is going to be Tangela. Tangela is actually one of the Pokemon that is keeping the same set that we ran. Giga Drain, Sludge Bomb, Hidden Power Ice, and Leech Seed. And I mean, it just worked well enough for us to, or for me to justify using it again. Giga Drain there being the primary stab, Sludge Bomb being there for Tapu Koko since this is my primary Tapu Koko switch in. And Hidden Power Ice to make sure the Zygarde doesn't get out of control. If he does decide to bring the Corkscrew Crash, I want something that can still beat it if Clefable accidentally takes that hit. And then, of course, Leech Seed can hit stuff on the switch in, stuff like Rapidash, or decides to go into Hawlucha on this. Being able to Leech Seed those, get a little bit of recovery, as well as chip the opponent, wear them down, is going to be nice. If you haven't been able to tell by this week, we're actually going to be, or if you haven't been able to tell yet, we're running a very bulky team. So our main goal is to whittle them down, but we still do have some offensive pressure. However, our main damage output is going to be through chipping his team. And I think we have the potential to do that just with all our bulky threats. So finally, it is the Escavalier. Same spread and same move set that we ran in the first week as well. Mega Horn, of course, is just a really strong bug stab. Although it does have that shaky 85% accuracy, that is why we have the X-Scissor. X-Scissor just being able to easily OHKO stuff like Alolan Raichu. It does good damage to a Ferroseed if we get to knock it off, which we do have. Iron Head is there because it has Tapu Koko, another 100% accurate stab move. So all really standard stuff here. Of course, the Assault Vest will allow us to pivot into those special attackers, which, as you can are about to see from the calc, with this spread, we are able to tank the Life Orb Tapu Koko's Thunderbolt. It does, I guess you can't see it behind the little box there, but as you can see, it never does over 50%. So we are able to tank 2 Life Orb Thunderbolts from Tapu Koko 100% of the time. And then the rest is, of course, put into the attack to make his damage output as high as possible. So, yep, that is going to be the team for this week. Again, same 6 Pokemon that we brought against him in the initial rounds of the tournament, but since we are changing up some of the sets, maybe he won't expect some of this. I doubt he'll expect Fire Blast on Gyarados, so hopefully we can catch him off guard, get enough damage on that Ferroseed, and sweep with Gyarados. And of course, lots of poison on this team. So as long as Ferroseed gets weakened early on, that's pretty much his only toxic absorber. So except Klefki, but Klefki doesn't have like recovery. It can have leftovers, but it can't. It doesn't have like synthesis, or in Ferroseed's case, Leech Seed. So we should be able to wear that thing down even without poisoning it. So yeah, that's going to be the team for this week. Hopefully it can put in the work it needs and advance us to the semifinals. This is, I guess I should mention, this is the quarterfinals. It was actually I think a 12-team bracket with 8 initial teams playing in week 1 and 4 teams, the top team from each division in the tournament, got to skip week 1 of the week 1 of Top Cut. So this is actually week 2 and the quarterfinals of Top Cut, since I was actually number 1 in my division. Hooray, hooray. Lucky me, I guess. But yeah, this is going to be quarterfinals of the Top Cut. We're going to be playing Sublime Maniac again, and hopefully we can give you a good game. Again, he was really tough in the initial weeks. I'm hoping I can pull it off again, but it's definitely going to be challenging. So I know it'll be a battle that you guys can enjoy. So thank you all so much for watching. The battle should be going up the day after this goes up, which this should be going up on Saturday. So you should be getting the battle tomorrow. And I will see you guys then. Goodbye.